live in India, and tea, or chai as we call it, it's an essential part of life here. From the moment we wake up and throughout our day, whatever we do, we work, we take breaks, we talk to people, we spend time with ourselves. All this time, we fill our stomachs with chai and don't really count the number of cups we have. And therefore, it's no surprise that a lot of people here, they claim that they have more chai in their bodies than blood. It has to be mentioned though, especially for some of you who are not from India, that the chai we make here, it's not really like the British tea. Although British were the first people who brought tea here. Tea as in the modern form. So we took tea from the British and made it our own. Something we did with the English language or cricket. So there we have an Indian version of tea. And as you would expect, it goes with plenty of masala or spices. And you can have ginger or cardamom. And of course, we do add milk. Oh wait, let me have a sip. Anyway, let me come to the point. So I'm going to talk about tea today. Isn't that nice? And in particular, I will talk about this wonderfully researched and documented book called Empire of Tea, written by three gentlemen called Markman Ellis, Richard Couton, and Matthew Mogger. The book, as you would expect from the title, it talks about the journey of tea, especially during the British Empire, how it got the status that it has worldwide during the British Empire. But the journey of tea doesn't start with the British Empire. It just got really popular during that time. The history of tea, in fact, it goes as far back as 3rd millennium BC, and it takes us to Asia and in particular China. And there are plenty of Chinese legends to go with that. One of them suggests the Emperor Shennong, he discovered it accidentally. So the legend says the emperor was a man of medicines and he was trying to see the effects of as many as 100 herbs on his body. So he was trying one after the other. And that's how he came across the leaf of tea. The tea leaf accidentally fell on the boiling water. And there he had it, the first tea, probably in the history of humanity. There are some other legends as well. And they go as dramatic as you move towards India. One of them from the Prince Bodhidharma. You might have heard about him. He is the founder of Zen Buddhism. So the Prince Bodhidharma, he was an experienced meditator. He set out on meditating for long hours and days, but somehow couldn't really finish it, and he fell asleep in between. And he got so pissed about it that he cut off his eyelids and threw them on the ground. And there sprang up the plants of tea to sanctify his sacrifice. Pretty dramatic, as I told you. But that's how things happen in India. or at least they used to. However unbelievable some of these legends may seem, but there is enough evidence to suggest that these ancient people were having tea. Of course, there was no mass production back then, so only a handful of people were lucky enough to have the taste of tea. But still, and they drank it with the idea that it had some kind of medicinal values. So, when tea first came to the attention of the Europeans, it was during the 16th and 17th centuries. They saw a unique opportunity of trade, as most of them were merchants. And it wasn't just about the trade, these people really liked the taste of tea. Who doesn't, after all? But the first contacts were not through loud announcements or advertisements, rather, quiet little whispers and gossips. The word traveled. Some of the travelers said that there was this mysterious herb found in China which they put in the boiling water and somehow it did magical things. It cured the headaches. It cured, in fact, many diseases. It relaxed their minds. It comforted them. So as the whispers traveled, people started to take more and more interest in that. By the 17th century, European travelers were incorporating tea in their diets and lifestyles. But as you would expect, they were going to mispronounce it. So, as the leaf was originally called cha, it became ta or te, and eventually tea. How the tea became an important part of British lifestyle, that also has an interesting journey. As it is obvious, the tea first traveled from China to Britain via merchants, so they were the first people to have the taste of tea or chai. But then it went to the upper class, the elites, philosophers, doctors, the maids of honor. They were the first people back at home to drink tea, and they really talked about it in their own circles. And they told all kinds of stories. Some of these people suggested that the tea wards off stones from the body. It cures headaches, cold, disturbing spirits, in fact. And that's what they told the British people, that Asians were very good at keeping the bad spirits away. And that's how they did it, through tea. They also talked about how a cup of tea kept them awake at night, and then they could do all kind of work. In other words, tea was nothing less than of a superpower. But at that time, tea was mostly associated with Eastern cultures, as kawa, or coffee as we know it, was associated with Muslim cultures. And there was something definitely exotic about tea. And as it happens with a lot of other things, when the elite class takes up something, it travels through literature and poetry and art into the mainstream. As the old saying goes, art imitates life and life imitates art. And once it became mainstream, the need for tea grew, and there began the trade with China. By the 18th century, tea was no longer an exotic or unfamiliar commodity in Britain. It was becoming increasingly available in grocery shops, Indian warehouses, Chinese shops, coffee shops, everywhere. Tea plantations had also sprung up, not just in mainland Britain, but also in its colonies such as India. And there we had it. We found our tea. And just like Britain, tea became quite popular here in India. John Ovington, a clergyman who then became chaplain, he writes in his accounts of travels in India. The essay is called Essay on Chai. He says that almost all the inhabitants of India, both British and native, they're fond of tea. And tea was getting popular throughout the empire. So many poems and stories were written around tea. One of them goes something like this: tea must succeed to wine as peace to war, nor by the grape let men be set at odds, but share in tea the nectar of gods. In fact, when you have a look at some of the newspapers at that time, you'll find certain paintings or drawings where people are simply sitting at the at the dinner table and just having some conversations and sipping a cup of tea. And you see that slowly but surely it was becoming a part of popular culture all throughout the Britain, and in fact all of its colonies. And then there was politics too, as there always is. The increase of tea trade and the rapidity with which the East India Company obtained territories, it remains unparalleled. In almost every part of the British Empire, the East India Company started planting and trading, and unsurprisingly made huge profits. They used force wherever it was required, but they seized upon every opportunity to have a monopoly in tea. And that is how tea became national drink of Victorian Britain. "Bring me a cup of tea in the Times," commanded the 18-year-old Queen Victoria upon acceding to the throne in 1837. And since then, we haven't looked back, have we? Here we are. The empire has ended. The British have left. But the tea remains. The flavor remains. Because the tea never really belonged to one culture. It belongs to all of us. And while you are at it, why not make a cup of tea right now and enjoy it? Thank you for listening.